Welcome to my video for how to play the solo from Something by George Harrison. I'm going to show you note for note how to play this solo, and I also want to talk about the notes that he's actually playing over the chords. Click on the Show More section. It'll show a link to this tab, and it would be very helpful if you can follow along. Get your guitar out and follow along as I'm playing. I also have a link to this other sheet that I'm going to discuss at the end of the video. So he starts on the 7th fret of the G string and hammers on to the 9th fret of the G string. Then with the second finger he plays the 8th fret of the B string and back to the 9th fret of the G string. So it sounds like this. That starts on a D note, hammer on to an E, a G, and then an E. It's a good principle when you're soloing to stress the third chord tone of the chord that you're playing. In this case we're playing a C chord, and the third chord tone of a C chord is an E, and the G is the 5th. In the second bar it switches to a C major 7. So this is how the second bar goes. Again, G string 7, hammer on to the 9th, the 8th on the B string, but he instantly does 2 full bends and back to the 9th of the G string. So those 2 bends he's doing is he's bending up to an A note, and an A is the 6th note of a C chord of the C scale. Now for the third bar goes to a C7 chord, and the C7 has the 7th note is what's called the flatted 7th, because it's actually flatted from the 7th in the C major scale. This is the C and the 7 in the C major scale, but the C7 is this note. And whenever you're playing a 7th chord, it's good to, somewhere in the phrase over that chord, to play that note, and George does that. So the third bar starts on the G string 7th fret, hammer on to the 9th, and then 8th fret on the B string, hammers to the 10th and pull off to the 8th. Like this. And then you do a slide to the 11th fret, but you switch to your first finger when you do that slide. Now that is sliding to the B flat note, and that note is that 7th note on the C7. Playing that note stresses the flat 7 sound. Immediately after that he plays on the B string 13th fret twice, and then he bends that 1 full bend. That's a C twice, bending up to a D. So let's play the third bar entirely. That's it. Now the 4th bar, it's played over an F chord. That starts with sliding with the 3rd finger up to the 15th fret and doing an immediate bend and back down. So those notes are bending up to an E and going back down to a D, and then 13th fret of the B string and 14th fret of the G string. So that's E, D, C, A. You'll notice on the F chord, the D note is what they call the 6th note of the F chord. Then you go, the C is the 5th and the A is the 3rd. This time the 3rd chord tone is an A note. Then he does this slide, G string 12th fret to 14th fret with the 3rd finger, and B string 13th fret twice, like this. After that he does on the D string 12th fret to the 14th fret, and twice on the 12th fret of the G string. So that's going from a D to E, and the reason he plays an E there is because the bass goes to an E on the last beat of the 4th bar. now we're on to the 5th bar. The 5th bar is played over a D chord. So the next note that he chooses to play is here, the 7th fret of the D string, and that's an A note. So the A note is actually the 5th tone of the D chord. So for the first time he's stressing the 5th tone of the underlying chord, just for a change, as opposed to the 3rd. Right after that A note on the 7th fret, then he does from the 9th fret of the D string, pull off to the 7th fret, and an immediate slide on the D string to the 12th fret with the 3rd finger. Immediately after that, 2 notes of the 11th fret on the G string. So those notes are D and F sharp. And if you look at a D chord, the D of course is the 1st tone, and the F sharp is the 3rd tone. Then he does a full bend from the 10th fret of the B string, and that ends the 5th bar. Now you'll notice on the 6th bar he repeats that exact same bend twice. So he's playing the same notes over a different chord. So that's interesting. So now he's playing a G chord. The 6th bar is a G chord. The B is the 3rd of the G chord, and the A is the 2nd. Now he does the most interesting note selection of the entire solo. So after that double bend from B down to A, he slides down to the 8th fret on the B string. He repeats it once, then he does this on the E string, 9, 8, 6, and then slides up and does 12, 11, 10. Those notes are the most interesting notes of the solo. Let's examine them over here. So that's these notes right here, C sharp, C, B flat. So if we play it here, an octave lower, where you can see the G chord, notice this. None of those notes are actually in the G chord. So what he's doing there, if you get this page and look at figure 3, figure 3 shows the G Locrian scale. It goes like this. And you notice those notes over the G string are exactly those 3 notes that George has chosen for this part of the solo. So he's actually playing notes from the G Locrian scale, which is a G diminished scale, but he makes it work because it's just a very short phrase. And then the notes that end up that bar are E, D sharp, D, and the D is just the 5th of the G chord. Now for bar 7, he does this A minor, and he descends the first note 4 times. So it's like this: A minor major 7, this chord is called, then A minor 7, then A minor 6. And I believe he plays it up here in the song. So you do an A minor playing the high 4 strings only, and you descend this is an A, descend it down to a G sharp, to a G, to an F sharp. So A minor major 7, A minor 7, A minor 6. And what I did there, my bar went from the index finger to the 3rd ring finger, covered the high 3 strings, and the index finger is playing the F sharp, which is the 6th. Now, this is the part where he does that kind of crazy bending. I find it much easier to bend downwards here, to get the bending really fast. Instead of bending up, it's easier to bend down to get the speed. It's the G string, 7th fret. He bends down 3 times and pulls off to the 5th fret. Then he does that again, but this time he bends it 4 times and pulls off to the 5th fret. So what he's doing there is E, D, C over A minor, so that's E, D, C. Those notes, the E and the C are in the A minor, but the D is the 4. So that gives like a A suspended 4 sound briefly. Now for the 8th fret, he does that bend one more time from the 7th fret of the G string, pull off to the 5th. Then he slides with the 3rd finger from the 7th on the G strings, from the 7th fret to the 9th fret, and then the 8th fret of the B string. Now you switch your finger and you put 3rd finger on the 10th fret of the E string and do a full bend. Down, then on the E string still 8, 10, 8, and finish on the 10th fret of the B string with an A note. So again, he's stressing the 3rd. Then he does that famous run that starts the song and ends the solo, which is a half bend on the 12th fret of the B string, which means you're just bending a semitone up to, so this is a B note and you're bending up to a C. So it's just a little bend, then pulls off and does a, on the B string, 10, 11, 12, 13. And that last note is a C note, which is the first tone of the C chord, which really nicely resolves the solo. So what do we learn from analyzing the solo and seeing George's note selection? Well, we learned that if you look at my sheet here and see figure 1 talks about a C arpeggio. Lots of videos on YouTube talk about that you have to master your arpeggios, and so a C arpeggio sounds like this. I think it's actually more important to master the scales, the C major scale and all the other scales, because most solos play scales while emphasizing the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and sometimes 7th if it's a 7th chord or a dominant chord. So you rarely find instances where people are soloing solely using the 1, 3, and 5 notes, because that sounds very stale and boring. That's 1, 3, 5. Now listen. I'm going to go from the 2 to the 3. The resolution there. Now I'm going to go from the 4 to the 3. I'm going to go from the 2 to the full chord. Now from the 4 to the chord. Now from the 6 to the chord. And the 7th to the chord. See how those notes that are in the scale but not in the chord, they want to resolve to the chord. Thus it sounds really nice, rather than just playing the chord tones, which would be really boring for a solo. So the things we want to take away from analyzing this solo is that the notes that you're going to sustain are going to be mostly the 3rd and sometimes the 5th, and maybe finish on the 1st. So the in-between notes are going to be the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, the 7th, and if it's a 7th chord or a dominant chord that you're playing, you're going to put the flat 7 somewhere in your solo phrase. So when you've written a song and you have a chord sequence, now you want to write a solo to it, if you learn from George's example, notice what chord you're playing at the time and play the chord, the notes around that chord, emphasizing the chord tones. And also remember to incorporate slides in there and bends like he does so masterfully. And last of all, occasionally you can throw in some crazy notes that aren't even in the major scale, like George does when he uses notes from the Locrian scale. And the funny thing is that's the part of the solo that most people remember because it just sounds so quirky. So please let me know in the comments section if you found this educational and insightful, because I hope to do more theory lessons on how to improvise. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.